Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira, Oliveira Lawyers. Today is Sunday, September the 29th. Now is 3:32, Rio de Janeiro time. Let me know if you guys can hear me, if you guys can see me okay. It looks like I have some type of delay in terms of what I'm saying right now and what I see streaming. Please let me know if there are any issues with the streaming. I am streaming out of a hotel room, so less than ideal technology, but hopefully we're gonna be able to address your comments and we're gonna have a productive live stream. And I see over here we have Dana. Well, good to see you, Dana. Good day, Luciano. Could you please explain the rental process in Brazil? Not Airbnb, but actual long-term rental in an apartment or house. I understand that is different from the US. What should I expect? Really nice question, Donna. So traditionally in Brazil, like across the states, the process is somewhat standard. There are a few laws seeking to protect particularly the tenants, right? Of course, like the landlords, they have usually the upper hand, and therefore the Brazilian legislators, they got basically what we call a lei do inquilinato, okay? Lei do inquilinato, which translates roughly as the legal protections for tenants. And this is going to preclude landlords from adopting too harsh clauses in a rental agreement. Okay. The usual term in Brazil nowadays is becoming like for a year. Even though you can, of course, a contract for a couple of years or even like 3 years. But the most usual standard nowadays is that you're going to rent for a year, and then this could be renewed indefinitely, right? And when it's renewed indefinitely, in this case, it becomes a month-to-month rental agreement. All right. In terms of like providing some type of like security deposit, there are landlords who are not going to accept a security deposit. Instead, they are going to ask for a guarantor. They are going to ask for a guarantor, and this is more common like for houses. Apartments nowadays, we are seeing a transition to more like, the security deposit approach, which is becoming more and more common in Brazil. But that's more like for apartments. For houses, is still very common for you to find landlords who are not going to rent a house, who are not going to get you a lease agreement unless you have a guarantor. And the idea here is that even if the house owner, if they are getting, let's say, 3 months in terms of security deposit, if you stay in the property for a year, like these 3 months are not going to be of any help. So instead, they are going to seek a guarantor with real estate property being provided as guarantee, okay? So if you don't pay your rents, if you overstay, I don't know, like for a year, the house owner, they know they are going to be able to get recourse against the tenant. And again, if you're just getting like 3 months of security deposit, this is not going to be of any good. Okay. Now for apartments, there is the so-called quinto andar. All right, I'm going to share here the name of this website, Quinto Andar. All right, Donna, I just shared in the chat window. So Quinto Andar, they kind of help with the security deposit by performing as the guarantor, right? So many house owners or apartment owners, they are gonna go with Quinto Andar because Quinto Andar, they are gonna charge a fee from you as the tenant, but they are gonna say, listen, landlord, if the tenant doesn't pay you, I will pay you, right? And they end up making money on both ends because they're gonna charge the landlord a substantial fee to manage and guarantee the rentals, and they also gonna charge you a fee, which is like usually addressed as an insurance against the lack of payment. Okay, so that we spoke about the guarantor, we spoke about the security deposit, we spoke about Quinto Andar, which is a new kind of business model. It's growing a lot in Brazil. And there is also a fourth approach when it comes like to, like what a landlord is going to require from you, Donna. And this fourth approach is going to be an insurance usually provided by a major name such as, in Brazil, Porto Seguro. Okay, we're going to say, I'm going to write over here, tenant rent insurance, or tenant guarantor insurance provided by Porto Seguro or another major provider, right? I just wrote here in the chat window, Donna, because this subject, right, like naturally for the landlord, particularly when they see a foreign citizen, they get a bit nervous because Brazilians in general, like, most people, right? Like, there are some people who are going to be traveling around the world, and they are going to understand the distinctions, but usually the typical Brazilian landlord, they get nervous about a foreign citizen because they think, well, maybe this foreign citizen is going to, lock my property and travel back to their home country, and I'm going to be here without my rentals. They cannot just break into your property without hiring an attorney for doing that. So, yes, the subject of security deposit or guarantor is going to come up. So I hope, Donna, that those tips were helpful. Think about Quinto Andar. They are a startup, and there is a reason for why they are growing so much. It is because they're doing a good job of bringing, the interests of landlords and tenants together. All right, Donna. And if you have any follow-up questions, we are here for you. We have Marcia Cabral. Welcome, Marcia. Good afternoon. I didn't use the last 8 days on my tourist visa extension. Can I re-enter Brazil and use those 8 days for, say, Christmas, or do I have to wait for 1 year anniversary of my first entry in April? Marcia, just before I give you an answer, I always needed to, give you this heads up. Counting days and interpreting the multiple provisions regarding time allowed in Brazil, it's always a messy subject. And for those who have been coming to Brazil for many years, they know that they are going to get different answers depending on who is at the border taking or reviewing your passport. All right, just because whatever I'm going to tell you over here, there is a good chance it's not going to be what you're going to hear from the border control agent. Another, sharing, just for you to understand this nuance of my answer. Whenever I come into Brazil, and I travel to the United States, to Portugal, other countries, and then when I come back to Brazil, I always ask the border control agent, like, are you a public servant or funcionário público, right? That's how we call a person who works for the government after they pass examination. So they are a government employee. Or are you an outsourced resource? and nine times out of 10, they are going to be outsourced resources, okay? And in theory, they go through some training, but in my opinion, not an extensive training. So usually, they are going to type your passport number in the computer to see if you are in one of the blacklists that they have access to. They are going to eventually be able to see, past entries, but there is nothing, as far as we know, in terms of a system that is going to tell the agent, all right, this person has exact 8 days to stay in Brazil. Okay, there is no such a thing. So usually this person who has been outsourced and most of the time is just like busy, having to handle hundreds of foreign citizens a day, they just want to get this line moving along. And again, unless they see something concerning, like, you have 0 days, they are just gonna, say, you're welcome to Brazil. Of course, first they're gonna ask what you're coming for. And then once they are satisfied, you say, well, I'm coming here, for tourism. I'm coming here to see friends. I'm going here, to see Christ the Redeemer. They are gonna let you in, okay? But don't expect advanced conversations about time at the border control. Now, answering your question, for most people, particularly once we go through a consultation, and then I'm going to ask like 20 questions to help me answer if you should come to Brazil or not. But for most people, my answer is going to be, listen, 95% chance you're not going to have any issues. You're going to be able to enter Brazil, but just remember that after the 8 days, you're gonna start to pay fines, because then, yes, you're gonna be outside of the allowed time window in Brazil, and then you're gonna start to incur fines around $20, a little bit less because of the currency exchange. The amount is actually 100 reais a day, and it can go up to 10,000 reais. Which is a little bit less than 2,000 US dollars. All right, Marcia. But if you're just gonna, be using, if you're just coming, like for a single week, you're good. Another possibility you could consider, we have a ton of clients. We have clients for the digital nomad visa. We have probably an average of over a client for the digital nomad visa per business day. Okay, so like per week, usually we have 5 to 7 new clients for the digital nomad visa, and the reason is this thing is gonna give you access to Brazil for like a year, and it's like not difficult to meet the requirements from the digital nomad visa. The major downside from the digital nomad visa, in my opinion, is that you're going to need to renew on a yearly basis, all right? Another heads up for you, Marcia, and that's just a heads up, because for a more thorough explanation, eventually you're going to need to schedule a consultation, potentially with a tax attorney. But once you cross 183 days in Brazil, you're going to become a tax resident in Brazil, meaning that you're going to need to file taxes in Brazil and potentially pay taxes to the Brazilian government. And this is not for a calendar year, all right? This is usually the follow-up question. Well, all right, so does it go from January the 1st to December the 31st? No, they start to count when you first entered Brazil. So keep an eye at the taxation subject, Marcia, because if you are 8 days, from, let's say, extinguishing or, like using up all your extension time, it means you are close to 180 days. And if you just overstay for, like a few days, it means you're going to become a tax resident. All right, Marcela, thank you so much for the feedback, and so happy to see you here. Marcela, we can hear and see you fine. I appreciate the feedback. That's very good to know. I was kind of nervous. I said, you know what, maybe I'm going to skip on this live stream, because our friends, they deserve like a top-notch live stream. But I'm so glad things worked out at the end. Marisa Navas, hi Marisa, so good to see over here, Marisa and Ricardo. I know that Marisa and Ricardo, they are always together. They are writing from Portugal. They have been very important to establish our small office in Lisbon. Thank you for your presence here, Marisa. The 552. If the purpose of the visit is tourism and yet we bring documents to apply for the digital nomad visa, want to discuss the immigration officers to become suspicious? That's a great question, the 552. So this is gonna address a technical topic, which is the intent. Intent is very important, not only for Brazilian immigration, but pretty much for any immigration system, such as the United States or the Portugal or Portuguese immigration system. And it goes like this: like when you are coming into the country, you must be using a visa, or in the case of the 552, I would imagine like a waiver, because U.S. citizens, and I think you are a U.S. citizen, right? The 552. So if you are a U.S. citizen, you would be coming under a waiver. At least until April the 10th of 2025, you don't need a visa to come to Brazil. You come under a waiver, right? So if you come to Brazil under a waiver, yes, you should be coming for tourism. Like you shouldn't be coming to stay here for a year, right? So the dynamic of what we see our clients, let's say, presenting to the immigration is like, it goes like this. They say, listen, I'm coming here to enjoy the country, and I'm here for tourism, right? Like they don't need to say, well, if I like it, I'm gonna, apply for the digital nomad visa. So from an intent perspective, you should be entering the country for tourism. And if you like it, that's why we always say, consider like your entry as a trial, as you're just trying Brazil on, and if you like it, then yes, you go ahead and you apply for the digital nomad visa. So from the intent perspective, you cannot enter the country with the intent of applying for the digital nomad visa, right? That's in theory. However, I know as a fact that there is a ton of our clients who, just mix up everything in their heads, and they come to the border and they say, well, I'm coming here, to Brazil, but I have the paperwork. I'm going to be applying for the digital nomad visa. And then this is going to go back to what I told Marcia Cabral. And then you're going to have like this person who's going to be, who's probably paid, I don't know, like 500 or maybe $700 a month, and like they are in no rush to find a problem with your communication, and they say, what, gringo, I see here you have this available, let me stamp your passport, go be happy here in Brazil, okay? So that's the dynamic we see. But if we're talking about the technical side of entering Brazil, or any country for that matter, your intent, it must match the type of visa or the underlying waiver that you are entering the country under. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but very interesting question, the 552. All right, Marcela, Luciano, tudo bem? I'm looking at some investments in Portugal. If I set up a personal meeting, are you able to review and help me understand the contracts, look into the company, and offer an opinion? Yes, Marcela, for sure. And we do have communication with local registries. In Portuguese, we say registro, and there is a distinction, an interesting distinction between the two countries, right? Like in Brazil, we say registro with an R. Between the T and the O, registro. And in Portugal, we say registro, no R between the T and O, but they have the kind of same configuration. So, transactions in Portugal and in Brazil, they are similar in many things, such as the lack of escrow, okay? And I've been getting emails, every now and then saying, listen, Luciano, you are actually mistaken. There is escrow in Brazil because Santander, they said they can offer me the escrow service, right? So Santander, which is like an international bank, working, cross borders in many countries, they do have something that they call like an escrow. But in our experience, nobody in Brazil or Portugal, or at least when it comes to the seller, is going to want to use their service. Okay, they are going to accept to work with an escrow such as the escrow provided by either Santander. There is a tiny startup in Brazil. They're trying to provide a type of escrow service, but I guarantee 90% of the sellers, they are going to walk away if you say that you're going to buy through an escrow, because it's just not part of the culture. And the properties or the sellers that are going to be willing to work with you, guess what? It's going to be either a property that is over market price, or it is a property that has some type of issue. And therefore, the seller is going to need to be flexible to get your business. Okay, I hope that makes sense. But just sharing some nuances, Marcela, and maybe comparing the two systems. But yes, interesting for you to note. Not sure if you have some connection to Portugal. Now, in terms of real estate prices, Spain is usually more competitive than Portugal. Probably because Spain is so much bigger than Portugal, and Portugal, it is very interesting from an immigration perspective. Is also close, is also very close, to England, and it has a tradition of receiving investors from throughout the world. So when you compare, property prices, just as an example. In Spain, you can buy a beachfront property for 250,000 euros. Even new properties, believe it or not, like they have some new developments by the coast in Spain, you buy for 250,000 euros. In Portugal, you never find this type of deal, just because, again, if you look at the coastline for Portugal, it's tiny when compared to the coast of Spain. So there it goes. It's a tip for you. We don't work with Spain, but we do have some knowledge about the Spain market more from a comparison perspective. And yes, Marcela, I would be very pleased to have a consultation with you. All right, Donna says, I plan on traveling around Brazil, and of course, I'm going to look up, but I still want a place to call home. If rent is paid, I should not have any concerns about being gone for a bit. That's a very interesting strategy, Donna. I usually do that. For instance, when I go to Portugal, I usually, book like, a long-term hotel, and then usually I'm gonna travel to different areas. But I still have like this main location. So when I travel, like for quick trips, I'm gonna be basically taking like, it could be like a backpack, and my suitcase, like my briefcase, not suitcase, right? And then the suitcase, the large one, I'm gonna leave in the main hotel, right? So I like your planning, Donna, and it does make sense. Just this nuance, right? And I'm not sure if you can tell from my, discussion on the guarantor, like the security deposits. Things are not usually as straightforward in Brazil as they are in the US, in my opinion. So I would prefer, at least for the first, 2 to 3 months, Donna, to do something like an Airbnb Something that is super common nowadays in Brazil is the Booking.com platform. Okay, like Booking.com in Brazil is so much more popular than Airbnb. So it would be a good idea for you to consider maybe doing a couple of months in one of those platforms, and then like do a more longer term rental, because this rental, like whenever you're gonna do a traditional rental, you're not going to be able to do for less than a year, right? With few exceptions, of course. Like if a landlord wants to do it, they can do it, but that's a big exception, right? Whenever you're going to a real estate agency, whenever you're dealing with like 95% of the properties, you're not going to be able to rent for less than a year. Okay, so I would recommend maybe an Airbnb slash Booking for a couple of months, and then once you find a place to call like your home in Brazil, then yes, proceed with the 1 year rental. All right, Marcia Cabral, thank you for your answer. It clears up a lot. Another question: I am a Brazilian citizen, but I have my residency in the U.S. Can I sponsor my husband for a V10 11 family union visa? Yes, Marcia. So first thing, the information I gave you up there is probably for your husband, right? Not for you. Like the Brazilian consulates, Brazilian immigration, Brazilian federal police, they would never allow a Brazilian to enter Brazil under a visa. Okay, you gotta enter under a Brazilian passport. It could be an expired Brazilian passport, but if they see on your passport, and this is something they can tell systemically, and even like the outsourced folks at the border control, they are not going to let it slip. They don't allow a Brazilian citizen to enter Brazil under a visa, right? That's a big no-no. It could happen, like maybe 1% of the cases they are not going to pay attention and let it slip. But that's one of the few things that border control is going to be absolutely on top of it, and they are not going to make any exceptions, right? So just make sure that you, Marcia, that you have your Brazilian passport to bring with you. It could be expired. If they can tell you are the person on the passport, they are not going to make a big deal out of it. If you're flying American Airlines, if you're flying United Airlines, okay, if you're flying Delta, they all kind of follow the same procedure. They're going to look at your U.S. passport. They're going to see, all right, you were born in Brazil. All right, I need your Brazilian passport. If you say I don't have it, guess what? You're not traveling to Brazil, right? So just keep that in mind, Marcia. Now, on your husband's residency, yes, and sorry about that. You said you have residency, so you don't have a U.S. passport yet, right? Or maybe you have, you're just saying that you live in the U.S. But for your husband, yes, like if you are legally married, you can certainly sponsor your husband for the family reunion visa. And there are, two different routes. One route is the visa itself that you're going to apply to a consulate, and another route is for you to apply straight for the residency without going through a visa in Brazil. And the advantage of doing that in Brazil is that you can actually apply for the family reunion residency, the longer term one, which would be like considered the permanent residency. If you do the visa, then the consulate is never going to give you, this permanent residency. They are just going to give you a visa for 12 months. All right, so through consulate, visa for 12 months. If you're done straight with a residency, meaning your husband enters Brazil under a waiver, meaning no visa, and then he could get like the permanent residency in Brazil. Big heads up. Permanent residency equals tax residency in Brazil, meaning your husband would have to file taxes in Brazil. Okay, so that's something, and there are 20 follow-up questions to this one. Usually when I am in a consultation with a person. So there are several nuances, but the rule is like you acquire permanent residency in Brazil, you acquire tax residency as well. You cannot pick just whatever it's good for you and say, well, I don't like taxes, let's leave this part alone. So you get the permanent residency, you also get the tax residency as well. More on the mid-term, you can actually turn off the taxation switch if you stop living in Brazil. But there is a transition period, and there are many nuances on how to do that. All right, Marcia. The 552, thanks for the response, Mr. Oliveira. Great stream as always. I appreciate the 552. I really like to see you guys here. As I like to say, without you guys, my live stream is not gonna make much sense. And you always have sharp, questions and comments, so keep it then coming. All right, we have a Donna. Donna, so what should my answer be? Visiting the country or retirement when asked at the airport? Donna, so following, just like what I was saying, and let me ask you, like, how many times have you been to Brazil? That would help me understand what you should be answering. But for most of our clients, it's going to be, listen, I'm coming here to enjoy Brazil. I'm coming here to dance some samba, okay? I'm coming here to enjoy some pizza in São Paulo. I'm coming here to seek Christ the Redeemer. And guess what? After the second sentence, the person is going to say, stop, stop, stop. Okay, just come here, all right? It's not like in the United States, Donna. Like, border control in Brazil is pretty easygoing. So again, after, coming here for Christ the Redeemer, eating pizza in São Paulo, they're going to stop you on your tracks and they're going to tell you, go be happy here in Brazil. All right, Donna? That's usually what you're going to say. They are not going to, they don't want to know what you're going to do next, Donna. The reality is they need to listen to your answer because of this technical component of the intent. And again, your intent is to come enjoy Brazil, and that's pretty good enough for the Brazilian immigration. All right, Praveen Somashikar. Welcome, Praveen. If I set up a trust or LLC in Brazil, can I set up a bank account? All right. First thing, Praveen, as of today, there is no such a thing as a trust in Brazil. Brazil does not recognize legally the existence of trusts. All right, so if you want to, set up a trust in Brazil, there is no such a thing. You're not going to set up any trusts in Brazil. There is a bill draft in Congress for a long time trying to set up a trust. I'm not sure if this thing was approved already. If it was, I would assume I would know by now. So most probably than not, this is still in the works. Now, interesting enough, like the Brazilian government is gonna, believe in trusts when it comes to taxation. So up to 2023, Brazil would just like disregard trusts altogether. But then someone came into the government and said, listen, you're leaving money on the table because Americans, they love trusts. You should not, just like disregard trusts 100%. You could disregard trusts when it comes to setting up one in Brazil. But guess what? You should recognize the existence of trusts when it comes to taxation. So after last year, starting for the present year, if you have a trust in the United States and if you are the beneficiary, and then of course you will need to have a consultation with a tax attorney to know the details. But the point is, like, if you are the beneficiary of a trust in the United States, you will need to disclaim your interests in this trust for a potential taxation in Brazil. Again, as long as you are a tax resident in Brazil. All right, so that's the first part of the answer. Now, for you to set up an LLC in Brazil, Praveen, you would need one of those two things. You should be either a permanent resident, or you should, have a Brazilian legal representative to represent you in Brazil, okay? And then once you have the LLC, your legal representative, not you, the legal representative would be able to open a bank account for the LLC. Brazil makes things very difficult for foreign citizens to open a company. You need a legal representative. This legal representative must be a permanent resident in Brazil. And I did record a video about a month ago or a month and a half comparing how easy, one of my comments in this video was to compare how easy it was to open a business in Portugal as a foreign citizen versus how difficult it is for a foreign citizen to open a business in Brazil. Okay, in Brazil, usually in my experience, individuals may take between 3 months to 6 months to have an LLC formed. In my experience, right? Like I'm sure there is a ton of people out there who's gonna say you can do it in 1 to 2 months. I never saw that happening, right? And I saw dozens and dozens of LLCs being opened over time. And in my opinion, it takes between 3 to 6 months. In Portugal, believe it or not, as a foreign citizen, you can open an entity on the same day, right? So there you go, like Brazil, 3 to 6 months, Portugal on the same day. So it's like, two different universes. And what is more funny or interesting, or maybe, not so funny, but maybe sad, it is that we got Brazilians, we got, the bureaucracy and the red tape, guess from who? Of course, from Portugal, right? Like Brazil was colonized by Portugal. We have so many things in common, and the bureaucracy came from Portugal. But Portugal, maybe because they are now inserted in the European Union, they have overcome this huge attachment to bureaucracy and red tape. And unfortunately, in Brazil, we are still attached to this red tape. And what's more interesting, at least from my perspective, whenever I'm dealing with registries, whenever I am in the academia, whenever I am, in a university program discussing with, colleagues or, professors, they think that this Brazilian bureaucracy is beautiful. They say, this brings a lot of safety for all the parties. It is one of the best notary systems in the entire world. And I look at that, and whenever I am, in one of those days in which I cannot keep quiet, I'm going to say, listen, that's your perspective. For foreign citizens and most people, this is just like horrible bureaucracy and red tape, and it does not help Brazil because, people, if they have a plan B, they are going to invest elsewhere, and they are not going to put up with all of this nonsense. And then, of course, people are not going to like my comments, and there you go. But that's just some background information for you, Praveen. I hope that was helpful. We have a Black Angel. Black Angel, good to see you over here. Black Angel is asking, if you're living in Brazil for over 6 months, will I need to pay taxes? Black Angel, as everything, related to taxes, we never have a straight answer. But what I can tell you, the rule is not 6 months, right? It's 183 days. So on day 183, you're not a tax resident. On day 184, yes, you are a tax resident. And as a tax resident, you're going to need to file a tax return. Now, if you're going to need to pay taxes or not, this is going to depend on several factors. I'm just going to give you a couple of them, right? The first one, if Brazil has a tax treaty with the country in which you are a resident. So let's say if you are a resident of the Netherlands has a really nice tax treaty with Brazil. So potentially, just because of this tax treaty, maybe you're not going to need to pay any taxes at all. The second part of the answer, or another factor that could, get you scot-free from paying taxes in Brazil, is if your tax bracket is going to be higher than the tax bracket that would be applicable to you in Brazil. Because whenever there is taxation at your source of income country, so let's say if you are from the United States and if you are under, let's say, a 17.5% tax bracket, from a very simplified point of view, Brazil would charge you probably 27.5, you're paying 17.5. Brazil is going to say, you know what, like I'm not going to double, charge you. If you paid 17.5 to Uncle Sam, I'm just going to charge you 10% because that's going to be the difference between the 17.5 you paid and the 27.5 I would charge you, okay? Now, this is very simplified. That's not how it works when you actually calculate the taxes, but the principle is exactly what I told you. Brazil will try to give you a credit for what you paid abroad at the source of income, if you will. All right, Black Angel. So too many factors to give you a yes or no, but now you have some elements to help you understand the tax consequences of staying in Brazil. All right, Donna is saying one time to Uruguay, which will be my point of entry again, driving to Brazil. Really nice, Donna. Yeah, so even more reason for you to say, listen, I'm here to know the country, right? And that's it. Enjoy the country. I'm a tourist. I'm a retiree, just wanting to have a good time here in Brazil. That's a more than enough answer, Donna. Now, entering Brazil through Uruguay reminds me of, I don't know, this is becoming more common, and it is always amusing to me. People who are gonna come driving from the United States, would you believe that, right? I think we have a couple, actually we have two clients. We have a client who came driving from California, and we have a client who actually bought a car. I don't remember if he bought the car in Uruguay or Paraguay, and he's gonna drive his way back to the United States, all right? So pretty amazing, right? And of course, this is gonna be a trip for, months and months. Like the first folk, I don't recall, I had a consultation with him, I think it was about a year and a half ago, and I don't recall if he said something like 3 months, right? Like it was how long it took him to come from California all the way to Uruguay, and then he was entering Brazil. He did apply for the digital nomad visa, something very interesting. You are able to keep your car, like the US car he brought, all the way to Brazil. He was able to keep the car for the whole 1 year. So the Brazilian federal police, they give you a kind of permit or an authorization for you to keep this car in Brazil for the duration of your legal stay. Now, of course, if he eventually becomes a permanent resident, then the Brazilian federal police is no longer allowing him to keep the car, and he would need to get this car out of Brazil, because another nuance: Brazil does not allow the importation of used cars, right? You can either import a brand new car, right? You bought at the dealership, like it's a brand new car. Yes, you can import it to Brazil. Usually not worth the trouble. Too much money is spent in brokers and taxation. Okay, and the other track you're gonna have is like cars that are older than 30 years. So, like a collectible, right? Like you're collecting cars. Brazil is going to allow you, to bring these cars and keep these cars in Brazil now as a nationalized vehicle. Okay, and then, it's usually more because the person is a collector or he has a sentimental value, and then they're going to go through all the trouble to have this done. Let me take a moment to appreciate the number of people we have over here. I see at least like 20 people right now in our live stream. I would appreciate if you guys would like this live stream. So this content is going to be found later on by other people just like you. And of course, this is going to be helpful for our business. I do appreciate, I see we have 10 likes already. That's half the number of people we have right now in the live stream. So if you could please take a moment, and if you find the information that you hear over here helpful, please like our live stream. All right, going back to Marcela. Don't forget seeing a game of football. Marcela, you are absolutely right. Maracanã would probably be like the number one experience, right? Like Maracanã is the main arena for soccer in Brazil, and it is the traditional one. That's where Pelé, right, our biggest soccer player from all times, have played amazing games, and that's such a great idea, Marcela. So if you go to Rio de Janeiro, Maracanã, that's my recommendation. Okay, if you go like to Fortaleza in Ceará, most people are gonna be cheering for Fortaleza, and there is just a single main arena in Fortaleza. It's not like São Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, in which you're gonna find several arenas. In São Paulo, it's really gonna depend on the team you like, because like the main São Paulo soccer teams, they are gonna have their own arenas, and it's gonna be like complementary, or it's gonna be part of your experience for you to pick the arena for the team that you're cheering for, right? So just as an example, in São Paulo, there is the team that is also called São Paulo, okay? São Paulo Futebol Clube, meaning São Paulo Soccer Club, and they have like an amazing arena with an amazing club, right? To which I used to go with my mother and sister. We used to go to the São Paulo Futebol Clube. They had like amazing facilities, like huge pools. There was a lot of programs, like for sports. So I did spend, much of my teenager years going to São Paulo Futebol Clube. Right now, if you know about Corinthians, which is the largest, you're gonna find it the largest crowd in São Paulo cheering for Corinthians. It's gonna be a different arena, and which is like in a very interesting part of São Paulo, is like a more developing area, right? Like the São Paulo arena is in a let's say somewhat richer part of the city, and the one from Corinthians, right, is going to be in a more popular, or like in development area of São Paulo. And not just as a coincidence, because Corinthians is recognized as the team for the masses, right? Like the team for the like the populars, right? And São Paulo is more like for, I don't know, like for like the middle class and the upper class, right? There is almost like a distinction, okay? But there you go. That's such a great advice, Marcela. Hermon, afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Hermon. Good to see you over here. Donna, does your office have a tax person? Donna, we do have, right? Like we do have a person who does our own accounting, and he does handle accounting, particularly for more straightforward cases, right? So let's say if you are a retiree, if you have a couple of sources of income, sometimes we can bring you on board. Like we have retirees, we have usually people with one or two streams of income. Now, if you have a more complex type of situation, what we're gonna do, we're gonna actually share, we're gonna actually refer you to one of our, tax attorneys, not that work with the firm, but they are kind of in a collaboration, approach with our firm, right? So when we have a consultation with the person, or if the person is a client like you, of course, we're gonna just give you the referral. You can go straight to this person. And usually, if you are a client like you are, Donna, then we even tell the tax attorney to not charge you for the consultation. Now, if you just had a consultation with us, then you still need to pay the consultation for the tax attorney, okay? But in your case, like if you are a client, then we tell them, listen, be nice with Donna, give her like an initial consultation free of charge, and then he would, go through like the taxation, enrollment, the first filing, all of those things. He would go in details in this consultation with you, Donna. All right, Wilbert Bailey. Welcome back, Wilbert. Good to see you again. Senhor Oliveira, tudo bem? Tudo bem, Wilbert. I am back from Brazil after visiting for 2 months. I was there from May 30 to July 30. May 30, June, July, 2 months. When can I return to Brazil, and how long am I allowed to stay? So, Wilbert, it's going to depend on your country of origin. Each country is going to have a different timeline. If you are from the United States, the rule is you can stay up to 180 days out of a year. And you've been in Brazil for 2 months. So let's say if you return, you could still return like a month from now or 6 months from now, and you're going to be basically enjoying or have access to the remaining month, because you have these 90 days, right? Now, when you enter for the second time, Brazil is going to look at your timeline and they're going to give you a second 90 days. But this 90 days is going to actually be added to the 2 months, and so you have 2 months plus 90 days, okay? But you can come back at any time. Like if you want to come back, tomorrow, you can come back tomorrow. And again, I mean, all of that with the, heads up that particularly at the border, people, the border control agents, they are not going to usually bother calculating or explaining or discussing these days. They are just going to let you in, okay? And but in my understanding here, this situation, you will get like 90 days. And if you're gonna exceed the 90 days, you're gonna ask for an extension. And when you ask for this extension, they are gonna sum up all the days, the 90 days that you're using in your next entry, the 60 days from your first entry, and then your extension is gonna be limited to a total of 180 days minus the 90 days that you use in your second entry and the 60 days that you use in your first entry, meaning that when you file the extension in your second entry, you're gonna get a 1 month extension, all right? It's not gonna be a full 90 days extension, okay? Marcela, wow, driving from the US, I heard there is a section that's not passable. Is it Panama? Yes, I would. You're absolutely right, Marcela, and I would assume there are multiple, right? Because there are many, there are rivers, there are, probably mountains and other, geographical challenges for a person to simply, drive it through. But naturally, people would probably hire, something like a boat, some type of carrier to help them overcome that particular obstacle. And that was my my impression until I saw someone telling me that they did so. It was exactly what you said, Marcela. I would assume it's not possible, right? I know there is Nicaragua, there are other places they have such a dense vegetation, forests and so on. So I mean, eventually you're gonna hit somewhere that is not gonna be drivable. I'm not sure if there is such a word, but there is going to be some areas in which you cannot drive. And then in this case, you're going to need to hire a carrier. This reminds me of another interesting, type of traveling. Like when I was, like in my 20s, I used to go to the northeast of Brazil, but particularly the São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro states, like the roads, they are not really safe for bicycling, at least in my opinion. So I would take a bus until Vitória, Espírito Santo, which is like after Rio de Janeiro. And then from there, yes, I would start my kind of road trip with my bicycle. And whenever I would have, something that was really tough, let's say if there was, some type of hill that I would need to, spend, I don't know, like 5 hours, driving uphill. In this case, I would resort to some type of, transportation, either like, I don't know, I would get, the help of a truck or, a bus, but kind of the same concept, right? Like, I mean, you kind of enjoy what you can, and what you are unable to overcome, then yes, you will need to hire some type of help, Marcela. But that's exactly the same reaction I had when I was first told about US citizens coming to Brazil by driving. Moses, welcome, Moses. Good to see you over here. As a foreigner who owns a studio apartment in São Paulo, managed by a rental company, if I use it for short stay and earn 4,000 reais in a month, after paying taxes, how much will I take home? Right, so managed by a rental company. So usually when you say I'm getting 4,000, this is gonna be after the management company, they take their share, their 20%. So if they're using Airbnb gets the first 10%, the property manager takes additional 20. So let's say if you get the 4,000, until last year, Moses, the taxation for non-residents was 25%. I'm not sure if this year is 15%. There were about 20 changes in the taxation scheme from last year to this year. I know up to 2023, it was 25% tax. And they would keep it those amounts. Like the correct approach is for your accountant to tell the property manager to keep the 25%. They need to pay. It's like a withhold type of thing. But like it comes to my head that maybe it's 15% this year. Okay, Moses. So 15%, taxes. And these are actually the income taxes that you need to pay. You also have like the IPTU. IPTU is like the property tax. Just like in the United States, you pay property taxes usually at the beginning of the year. In Brazil, you have an option to pay usually by February the 10th, or you can actually pay in 10 installments. So if you're doing the short-term rental, Moses, you could eventually pay like on a monthly basis. And whenever you are about to hire the property manager, you should bring that up. You should bring that up, like the tax that you need to be withheld. That's the first point. The second point, you're gonna need their help to pay, the yearly tax. Okay, and property managers, and that's a common misconception that I see happening very often with foreign citizens. They think, they are going to come with their business and there is going to be a lineup of service providers begging to get to their business. And that's exactly the opposite. More often than not, I see, foreign citizens begging for the good service providers, right? Like there is a bunch of stuff out there that you don't want to touch. But the good ones, they can pick the clients they are going to work with, right? And not only for citizens, we as Brazilians as well, right? Like, I mean, we are renovating our office in Rio de Janeiro, and like the contractors, we have so many jokes like on TikTok, on Instagram, or on how you need, to take care of your contractor in order for the contractor to work with you is just unbelievable, right? If you want to work with someone who's going to deliver what they are promising, again, if you go out there, there's going to be 10 contractors who's going to, be very fast in their communication. They're going to tell you beautiful things, but once, you pay the first installment, guess what? Nothing is going to happen, and you're going to be entangled in a bad situation, okay? Even in the United States, right? Like, I mean, let's be honest here. Like, even in the United States, for you to get a good contractor, a contractor that's going to do what they're promising, who's going to deliver a quality service, is not easy to find, okay? So property managers, like we have a property manager in São Paulo. We don't do property management as we speak. We actually, refer some of the providers for, to our clients, of course. And, unless you agree up front, like if you sign a service agreement, then you say, oh, and by the way, you also need to help me pay for the yearly taxes. They're going to say, well, that's not my job. That's your problem, right? That's pretty much how it works. So just a heads up, you should factor in those questions whenever interviewing the property managers to see if they are going to allow you to meet your goals, Moses. And all right, guys, we are already 1 hour into our live stream. I'm gonna take an additional couple of comments or questions over here. Our next live stream is gonna be not on this Wednesday. I'm gonna skip Wednesday this week, but on next Sunday, the same time, 3:30 Rio de Janeiro time, we're gonna be meeting again. So if you didn't have the opportunity to ask all your questions, or if you have new questions or new comments, I invite you to join us on next Sunday. We don't have the notify me button set up, but I promise that as soon as I finish up this live stream, we're gonna set up the notify me button, so you can go over there, you click on it, and then you're gonna be reminded when we are starting our next live stream. All right, Marcela says, probably good to remind everyone having too nice of a car in cities like Rio can be dangerous, though. Luciano, Maracanã is amazing. Corinthians, fala sério, Mengão aí. Yes, I have a Mengão. Marcela is referring to Flamengo, right? Mengão is like a nickname, like, for those who of course like Flamengo. And in Rio de Janeiro, I actually, cheer for Flamengo, and I have Flamengo shirts in my collection, Marcelo. In Rio de Janeiro, the only shirts I wear, are gonna be Flamengo shirts, okay? And in São Paulo, I like, just São Paulo because that's where I grew up. And my father, he used to cheer for Palmeiras. So in São Paulo is this kind of, schizophrenic situation in which I really like both teams, São Paulo and Palmeiras, which, like, for Brazilians, it's crazy. They say, well, you don't really like soccer because you're saying that you like two teams, right? But, it is what it is. Like in São Paulo, I cheer for Palmeiras and São Paulo. And in Rio de Janeiro, I cheer for Flamengo. All right, really nice comment. Donna says, I have a trust. So Donna, in your case, I would probably refer you to our colleague. His name is Marcelo Brumberg. All right, you can just ask, like, I think you are working with Patrick, if I'm not mistaken, right, Donna? You can ask Patrick, or you can ask Justin as well. Like, they know Marcelo Brumberg, and they are gonna share Marcelo's contact information with you. All right, Donna? And then just remind them, say, listen, Luciano said I could get a complimentary consultation with Marcelo, because then we need to tell Marcelo, it's going to be complimentary. Otherwise, he's going to charge, he charges the same fee that we charge, by the way, right? Which is kind of standard for the attorneys in our circle to charge. But if you have a trust, yes, Donna, I do recommend a consultation with the tax attorney. So that's it for today. I want to say, thank you for participating. Thank you for such interesting comments. There was such a nice balance of technical information and fun stuff. Your participation is going to help me keep this balance. I am more of a technical guy, but if you keep those interesting topics coming in, it's going to help me, keep a lighter live stream that's going to reach more people. Again, thank you so much. We're going to see each other again next Sunday, and have a blessed rest of your Sunday all. You take care.